योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। हरिः ओम्। So last time we had looked at Sutra 1.49, which covered what is special about Ritambara Prajna with respect to Shrutanumana Prajna. Right? And we went to a lot of sort of a technical detail about the different pramanas and why the Samadhija Prajna, which is the Ritambara Prajna, which is born out of Samadhi, what is special about that. I had also said last time that in our sort of journey through the first chapter, we are standing at a threshold between the Sabija and Samprajnata state and the Nirbija and the Asamprajnata state that is going to come. We've already seen how one goes from the normal worldly or the Vyuthana state. Vyuthana means the normal worldly state, to the Sabija and Samprajnata Samadhi state in a lot of detail. So Patanjali and Vyasa, both of them gave us the exact mechanisms. What happens to the yogi, what happens in the chitta, what is samapatti, what are the different gradations of samapatti, what are the different supports of the chitta. So in high level of detail, in a step-by-step fashion, we learned how the transition between the Vyuthana to the Sabija or the Samprajnata happens. Right? Now standing at this threshold, we are sort of going from this Sabija or Samprajnata into the Asamprajnata state, onward to Kaivalya, which is sort of the ultimate. So it's sort of, this text is very special in the sense that this is one that gives the exact detail of what is happening, almost as though they are describing a mechanism. Right? That is not available in a lot of the other texts. So here it's given in the almost very technical detail in a sort of an academic fashion of exactly what is happening. So let us now carefully learn what is being said. And like he said last time, the topic of Ritambara Prajna is not over. Now we will see how the Ritambara Prajna helps one to go forward from the Samprajnata or Sabija on to the higher, the Asamprajnata, and finally to Kaivalya. Okay. Alright, so we are now today going to look at 1.50. So before the sutra begins, Vyasa has a very nice line that introduces the sutra. So Vyasa says, Samadhi prajna pratilambhe yoginaha prajnakritaha sanskaraha navo navo jayate. So this gives a clue as to the mechanism that's going to be described. So what he's saying is, Samadhi prajna pratilambhe. When this particular prajna, which we already saw, prajna is sort of the state of the chitta, in some sense the intellect or the intelligence. So it's hard to find one word, but there is a aspect of intelligence and awareness and knowledge and so on in prajna. Here the reference is to the samadhi prajna, which refers to the prajna born out of the samapattis, which we just referred to as Ritambara prajna. Samadhi prajna pratilambhe. Pratilambhe means having attained. Okay, having attained the samadhi prajna, yoginaha, of the yogi, prajnakritaha sanskaraha. So the sanskaras, what is sanskara? As we have seen in the past, the sanskara is the latent impression left behind by any state of the chitta. Okay, and this samskara gives rise to a state of the chitta, the vritti, later. The vritti again gives rise to samskara. So we had seen like I think the third or the fourth sutra that said, vritti samskara chakram anishma pravartate. So it is like a wheel. The vritti leads to samskara, which again leads to vritti, again leads to samskara, and that is going on forever, right? So these latent impressions are samskaras. Now here what is happening? Samadhi prajna pratilambe yoginaha prajnakritaha samskaraha. So which means this is the samskara that has been created as a consequence of that particular prajna, the samadhi prajna. So this samskara, prajnakritaha samskaraha, navo navo jayate. There are new and new samskaras are born in that state. Right? These samskaras are unique samskaras because before this state, samskaras always get generated whenever the chitta is operating, and chitta is always operating. However, before this state, the yogi in general, let's say, was in a vyuthana state, in a worldly state. So the samskaras coming from a worldly state are entirely different from the samskaras coming from a samadhi prajna. So that is why it is said navo navo jayate. So whenever the yogi is able to attain this samadhi prajna, the samskaras are generated as a consequence of that prajna, and these are entirely new, and such new samskaras are born. That jayate means born. So this is how Vyasa is introducing the sutra. Now let us see the sutra and let us see the sort of the meaning of the terms. Tajjaha samskaro anya samskara pratibandhi. So this is the sutra 1.50. So here Patanjali is saying Tajjaha samskaraha. Tajjaha means the samskara born out of that. So here Patanjali is referring to the samadhi prajna or the ritambara prajna, and he says the samskara born out of that is of what nature? He says anya samskara pratibandhi. Okay, so that particular samskara born out of the samadhi prajna is a pratibandhi, is sort of the vanquisher, okay, of the anya samskara, the other worldly samskaras. So the samskara arising out of samadhi prajna is able to defeat or overcome or vanquish the worldly samskaras of the yogi. That is what the sutra is saying. Tajja samskaraha anya samskara pratibandhi. So now let's again as usual understand the terms. Tajjaha means born out of that. Tasyaha ritambara prajnayaha jayate iti tajjaha. Okay, born out of the ritambara prajna. Samskara. So there is a nice definition of samskara. It says anubhava janye smruti heto atma vritti guna bhede prativyadi chatushtayasthe samskaraha. So what is a samskaraha? Anubhava janye. So a samskara is born out of one's experience. So whatever vritti has happened, something one has experienced, that leads to the birth of a certain samskara. So in this case, the experience is that of the ritambara prajna or the samadhi prajna that will give rise to that particular samskara. So anubhava janye. Smruti hetau. So what is that? The samskara is the cause of a smruti, right? Which means, so what is smruti? We have seen in sort of high detail. I think there were 2 or 3 sessions where we talked about smruti. But again, to sort of simplify and make it not very accurate, but smruti, if you think of it as memory, right? So these are a state of the chitta arising due to some past experience. Okay. So the hetu of that, what gives rise to the smruti, is samskara. Okay. So the smruti hetu. Atma vritti guna bhede. So what is the nature of that? It is a guna. Guna means it is like characteristic. Okay, it is a characteristic of what? Atma vritti. Okay, what is Atma vritti? Atma refers to oneself. Okay, here it doesn't refer to the soul. It doesn't refer to the Purusha or the untouched, sort of unchanging entity. Atma in general refers to oneself. So it can be Sharira Atma, Manasa Atma, and so on. So it is the body, mind, organs, and everything else. So the Chitta, the Antakarana. So here, the whole complex, it's vritti. Vritti means the state. So it is a specific characteristic, guna bhedaha, So it is a specific characteristic of the state of oneself. Okay, that is a samskara. So it is born anubhavajanye, born out of experience. Smruti hetau, giving rise to smruti. Atma vritti guna bhede, characteristic of a specific certain individual. Pruthivyadi chatushthayaste. Okay. So where does it reside? It resides in the Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu, Akash, which is to say that it is one of the nature of one of the material entities. So samskaras are not metaphysical entities on par with Purusha and so on. They are neither the subtlemost entities at par with Ahankara and Tanmatra and so on. They are regular material entities residing within the elements, Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So these are the samskaras that are getting generated, whether one is in a worldly state, which is vitthana, or one is in a samadhi state. So whenever the chitta attains any state, it gives rise to samskara. The samskaras are latent impressions that are going to reside where in the Pruthivyadi Chatushtayasthe. So they are going to reside there and then give rise to that state of the chitta at a future point. Right? So that is how the thing operates, and that is why it is a wheel. Right? So as an example, if there is, they say, there is an attachment, there is a samskara, which is going to give rise to attachment again, and so on. Right? So this is how these things are operating. But the samskara from the samadhi prajna is special. Why? It is anya samskara pratibandhi. It is of the nature that it will overcome, it will fight against, it will vanquish the other samskaras which are of the more worldly nature. Okay? That is what the sutra is saying. Tajja samskaraha anya samskara pratibandhi. Now we'll look at the commentary.
So the Nirvichara Samapatti fetches Adhyatma Prasada. From Adhyatma Prasada, what is the Adhyatma Prasada? It is of the nature of Rutambara Prajna. And from Rutambara Prajna, what happens? Apart from getting wisdom, apart from getting the spiritual wisdom, so-called spiritual wisdom, it also counters the other samskaras. Now, this is typical, specific aspect of Rutambara Prajna. This is not the case which we encounter in our life. If you get new samskars, new impressions, it doesn't mean that your old impressions are gone. It doesn't necessarily counter old impressions. It might suppress it, but it doesn't replace, it doesn't vanquish, it doesn't destroy. So these are samskar turned out by our empirical process, psychological process, mental processes. So this is how we experience our samskaras. Even if you get some realization, revelation, which you might call some enlightenment, it doesn't obliterate yesterday's ignorance. It remains. It's a structure over it. It's a structure over the ignorance that you already had. It's not that you forget it. As we come to age, do you mean to say that you have forgotten what you did when you were 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 or 25 or 30? The samskaras are there. So we have structure of samskaras which is just raised up. The structure is only raised up. Suppose somebody is a very unscrupulous person in earlier part of life, and later part of life becomes more sagacious person. All the impressions of that phase when he was unscrupulous, a brute, subhuman kind of thing, are not destroyed. They are there. So we have a condition of structure over the samskaras, structure of the samskaras. Old samskaras remain and new samskaras come up. If the new samskaras are not sufficiently strong, maybe new samskaras will go away and we will again put the lower floor on the upper floor. So this is how we experience structure of samskaras. But here, it's a unique thing because of Samadhi Prajna, Ritambhara Prajna. The samskaras generated out of Ritambhara Prajna have what you call a special category, special condition, which not only comes up and gives you new samskaras, but vanquishes earlier samskaras. This is a unique thing about Ritambhara Prajna. In case of other prajnas, that is not the case. You can get any kind of prajna. We also get prajna. We are developing our prajna year by year, decade by decade, life by life. We are evolving it. Prajnas are evolving for us, perhaps. But they do not replace earlier prajnas. But here it's a very unique case when it is of the class of Ritambhara Prajna. That's called Ritambhara Prajna Samskar. That's one thing. Another thing to be noted here, what's the difference between Vasana and Samskar? What's the difference between Vasana and Samskar? The Vasanas are constituted in our Pranamaya Kosha. And Samskars are from Manomaya Kosha. The Pranamaya Kosha doesn't have history of the time immemorial and time without beginning. Manomaya Kosha has all Samskars. So, if an analogy has to be given, what's the difference between a seed and a sprout? The seed will not tell you what sprout will it have. And that's why all these botanists, they put all seeds in packets and brand it. Rose, hibiscus, mango, etc. You cannot find a seed merchant who doesn't have any packets and labeling on seeds, because from seeds he himself cannot make out whether it's going to be a flower out of it or a fruit out of it, or what kind of flower and what kind of fruit. So although they are trained botanists, they still put labels on the seeds, because from looking at the seeds they cannot really identify. Seeds almost look alike. There is not much difference. Usually the colors range between brown and grey. And the shapes are usually identical shapes, not much difference between the shapes. That's why in botanical merchant shop, seed merchant shop, they always put label over the seeds. But once you get sprout from the seed, you know that this is rose plant, this is tamarind plant. The moment sprout comes, they will know what kind of plant is this. But with regards to seeds, they cannot make out. Suppose you break a seed and show the content of the seed, small tiny particles, they cannot make out what seed is from the particle. If you give a scan of the seed and show the inner constitution of the seed, which is tiny particles, they cannot make out. If you take one particle and break it, still they cannot make out. Moreover, which part of the seed becomes the root of the tree, which part of the tree becomes the trunk of the tree, which part of the root becomes the barks and branches and leaves and fruits and flowers of the tree, cannot be identified. They are all contained in the seed. You can't say this part of the seed will give root, this part of the seed will give trunk, that part of the seed will give branches and barks and tree, etc., etc. But once the sprout comes, you start identifying this is this plant. So vasanas are something like that. Some kind of mark they have it. They show their existence and they show their class. Vasanas are not necessarily to be taken as something bad. There are Shubha Vasanas, Ashubha Vasanas. Shubha Samskars, Ashubha Samskars. Patanjali, later in the 4th chapter, he will tell us about Vasanas. as to how the vasanas are constituted, the factors of vasanas. But samskars are totally different than vasanas. That's an earlier phase. In Manomaya Kosha, we have all impressions to be any mosquito, tiny microscopic creature, to dinosaurs. Everything in Manomaya Kosha, not in Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha is for our present life. Samskars, vasanas required for present manifestation. In Pranamaya Kosha, you will not have the infrastructure of samskars of ants, elephants, lions, tigers, cats, mice, etc. They are in Manomaya Kosha. So whatever is the content of Manomaya Kosha is samskar. And whatever is the content of Pranamaya Kosha can be understood as vasanas. They are for present life. If there is potential for you to be an ant or elephant, it is not in Pranamaya Kosha, it is in Manomaya Kosha. Therefore, next life we can become elephants, we can become ants, we can become mosquitoes, we can become bedbugs, it can become anything. That is Manomaya Kosha, not in Pranamaya Kosha. Now these samskaras, if it is annihilating the other samskaras, which are the other samskaras? Two classes of samskaras are spoken about by Patanjali in the 3rd chapter. That's a classification applicable, suitable for yoga. There are several classifications of samskars. Vitthana nirodha samskara yoho abhibhav pradurbhava. Vitthana samskars and nirodha samskars. Vitthana samskars are the samskars needed for our worldly life. And those vitthana samskars will generate vitthana vasanas, tendencies, subliminal impressions as they call it in English. Again, that English word in psychology can be argued upon. They call it subliminal impressions. I don't know if anybody is a student of psychology. They call it subliminal impressions, which are subconscious tendencies. What is sublime about it? What is sublime about it? Why subliminal? So anyway, vitthana samskars are countered by the prajna samskars. So the yogi will be, now we, although we are practitioners of yoga, we can have spikes in our samskars. Next life, we can be even becoming Osama bin Ladens. Unless we have sufficiently collected the virtuous samskars, adhyatmic samskars, we can't have assurance that will be in an ascending process of evolvement. We can evolve and devolve, evolve and devolve, evolve and devolve. Only at a stage in spiritual development, there comes a phase where you will not devolve. You will evolve. That is post samadhi actualizations. Until samadhi is not actualized, we can go up and down in our all incarnations. Once samadhi prajna samskars are attained, Ridambara prajna samskars are attained, you get one assurance that you will be on ascending scale. You won't go up and down in your journeys, which are called as transmigrations. In our transmigrations, we can't say next life will be definitely better. We can even become worse. It depends upon our karmas, etc. And the residual vasanas that we have, the sanchita that we have, the deposits, karma deposits that we have in account, we can go up and down, up and down, up and down. But when the samadhi prajna is in place for a yogi, the klesha management takes place, the kleshas, some of the kleshas are destroyed gradually. So there won't be up and down once you have prajna samskars. Now today our samskars are such, if you get a new samskar today, it's not that you have forgotten yesterday's samskar. Then he says, Nava Nava samskaro jayate, upajayate. New samskars are born. These new samskars means they are always on ascendance. So samskar baggage will be slowly reduced for a yogi. Suppose I take a class tomorrow, it doesn't mean that you will have forgotten your yesterday's class. Is that right? But here there are two aspects. One is pratibandhi to earlier samskars, vitthana samskars, negative and opposite samskars. So they are destroyed. So there is a destruction process going on of the vitthana samskars, outgoing samskars by prajna samskars. Second one, if prajna samskar for the first samprajna samadhi will be again taken to latency by second round of samprajna samadhi. So tajya samskaro anya samskara pratibandhi. Here also Ritambhara Prajna topic doesn't end. It goes to next sutra as well. Tasya api nirodhe sarvanirodhat. So there will be the prajna samskars will not only counter vitthana samskars, but prajna samskars, samadhi after samadhi after samadhi, where there is a progressive process. Earlier samskars are not needed. New samskars will come up and earlier good samskar is not needed. It is more evolved version. So it will, with the rounds of samadhis which are generating prajna samskars, which are generating Ritambhara prajna, not all samskars generate it. All samadhis don't generate it. Just one class of samadhi generates it. Vitarkanugata will not generate prajna samskar. Vicharanugat will not generate. It is Asmitanugata Samadhi will generate prajna samskars. So second Asmitanugata Samadhi, third Asmitanugata Samadhi, fourth Asmitanugata Samadhi. So there is a progression. So earlier samskars are not needed. They become null and void. They become null and void. So with respect to our embodiment, we are told if we are not using something, it will slowly disappear. Darwin's theory that says that we had tail and the tail went away. If you are stopping to use your limbs, you will be losing the limbs. So beware, you are all in computer era, cyber era. Slowly, we will be not using the limbs. Because computer will do, robot will do everything for us. So many activities will slowly go away. Time will come that so many things will be going away from us. And if we stop using the intelligence also because of the artificial intelligence, that also will be going away after some time. So, when they are not useful, they go away, they say. When something is not useful, that's how human being is evolved. According to the theory of evolution. So many things have gone away because they were not needed. When they are not needed, they go away. If there is no prayojanam, according to teleology, it goes away. So suppose today's prajna samskars are not useful for me tomorrow, how long will they stay? If tomorrow I am going to get new samskars and old samskars are not useful, how long will they stay? So that's a teleological principle which Patanjali has also mentioned. Krutartham pratinashtam api anashtam. Krutartham pratinashtam. If it is not necessary, it goes away. So, the first prajna samskar, if it is not useful, when the 10th prajna samskar has come up, it will go away. So ultimately the samskar collection also goes away. Ultimately there is only one samskar to be replaced by the ultimate last samskar. That's how Kaivalya takes place. So samskar number 1, G1, G2, G3, G4, G5, G100. Suppose G101 is liberation. So G101 it comes, G100 will go away. It only cancels, it only destroys one samskar. It doesn't have to destroy huge body of samskars. So samskars are slowly being destroyed, and even samadhi samskars, when they are evolved, less evolved will be as the tail falls away, or in a spaceship the stages falls away. In spaceship, rockets, the stages fall away, you know that? The stages which are burnt, they fall away. They don't stay there. They are not parasites, they fall away. Fall out. Similarly, samskars will fall out. Even prajna samskars. G1 will fall out when G2 comes. G3 will fall out when G2 comes. Because the next samskar is inclusive and more evolved. So, penultimate samskar will fall off when ultimate samskars will come up. Last samskar will come up. It has to only destroy one samskar, not huge baggage of samskars. So tasya api nirodhe sarva nirodhat. When that is restrained, everything is to be deemed restrained, and therefore there will be niribija samadhi, which is not asamprajna samadhi class, it is final samadhi, one which delivers liberation. So there are two nirbija samadhis Patanjali has spoken about, or which Vyasa has made it express. One is asamprajnat samadhi, because it doesn't have seed, and therefore it is asamprajnat. This last one is not seed. Asamprajnat samadhi has no seed, therefore it is nirbija. This is not a seed, therefore it is kaivalya. Therefore kaivalya comes up. If it is a seed, then of course there will be a sprout. So not being seed, it is called nirbija. Not having seed is called nirbija asamprajnat. So there are two nirbija samadhis mentioned in Patanjali's treatise. Have you understood this? Not having seed and not being seed.
Does not need to reproduce. Does not need to reproduce, therefore has no seed.
Yeah. Kaivalya is therefore not a production. If you say kaivalya comes up, what comes up will go at some point in time. That's the theory. If something is coming up, if something has birth, it is going to have death. If kaivalya is born at some stage, it is going to die, and then it is not kaivalya at all, it's not liberation at all. So kaivalya doesn't come like birth comes. Kaivalya doesn't come. So it's a mysterious thing to understand what kaivalya. Kaivalya is already there. Kaivalya is already there. If it is coming at some point in time, what comes is going to get destroyed. That's the Satkarya Bhava, theory of Satkarya. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha Bhagavad Gita. What exists will never cease to exist. What doesn't exist will never come to existence. Now we will all say, we don't have liberation. Are you all liberated? No. That means it is not there. If it is not there, it will never ever come. That's Satkarya Vada. So therefore it is naive to believe that we are not liberated. We are liberated, we are bound. And some of the beautiful examples are given. You know, parrot. There is, when the parrot is in the cage, you know it is arrested. But sometimes there need not be a cage at all. You just keep that hook on which the parrot sits in a cage. It sits and I think it is arrested. So we are having, our bondage is not real. If our bondage is real, it will never cease to exist. Bondage will never end if the bondage is real. Do you understand? Kaivalya, liberation is real. That means it is already there. So that's why we live in avidya. If you recall the illusion that we have. Each klesha is an illusion. So it doesn't, it should not be construed that liberation happens. If it happens, it was not there at some point in time. So what was not there can never come into existence is the precept of Sankhya. And what is in existence will never cease to exist. So liberation, moksha, kaivalya, these are all mysterious concepts that we should understand. Samadhi will happen, kaivalya doesn't happen. Samadhi has to happen. Therefore samadhi is not eternal state. Samadhi goes away. Samadhi comes and samadhi goes. On the point after liberation there is no case such as samadhi because there is no chitta. Where are you going to have samadhi? That's why the other day I told you about relative realities, absolute realities. So even samprajnat, asamprajnat samadhi is not an absolute reality because it was not there at some point in time. It came up at some point in time. Having come at some point in time, it is go away subsequently. It is not eternal reality. Now that's not the case of kaivalya, liberation, freedom, emancipation. It doesn't have to come. It is already there. But because of these vasanas, we think that we are bound. We think we are bound. We are not bound. Metaphysical soul has no, if you have read Shankaracharya's Atmashtaka, na baddha na mukta. I am neither bound nor liberated. Because who is liberated? One is bound who is liberated. Unless you are bound, you don't get liberation. Is that right? If you are not bound, where is the question of liberation? So these are all mysterious aspects which you should be familiar with if you are a student of philosophy. Anyway, Navadava samskars. These are Navadava samskars, new samskars of such a case that old samskaras also go away. If they stay, like you have been buying clothes for all these years. Your old clothes are still in a wardrobe. Something is 5 years old, something is 8 years old, something is 2 years old, something is 1 year old, something is 1 month old, something is just bought yesterday, or something I just bought today. So these Nava samskars are such. The older samskars of that class of Nirodha are not necessary tomorrow. Because the process is inclusive. Yoga is inclusive. If you have heard this in class, it's an inclusive process. Your yesterday's prajna samskar will be included in today's generation of G2. G1, G2 will be included in G3. G1, G2, G3 will be included in G4. Why do you need them? Suppose you have a G4 smartphone. You don't maintain your G1 today, is that right? Why should you maintain G1 when you are G4? Even if you maintain it, it's going to be redundant, it's going to be not used. Because you will not go back to G1, you will, as you have G4, because G4 includes G1. Technology of G1 is included in G4. So if you have G4, it will be redundant. So even prajna samskars become redundant when new samskar comes up. That is replaced by another more evolved new samskar. So the samskars become redundant, and ultimately there is one samskar to be restrained. Penultimate samskar to be restrained by ultimate samskars. So when that does, that's kaivalya. That's one more thing to be noted here. Then he also mentioned about Smriti, and we, for our convenience, we say memory. It's not proper. Smriti is Smriti, memory is memory. Why? Suppose I say lemon, cut lemon and keep in front of you. There will be watering in your mouth. Is that right? Is it memory of lemon? So, memory doesn't have this power. The English word memory, which is limited, it is a mnemonic term. It's a mnemonic term. But suppose I keep tamarind, cut tamarind in front of you. Lemon, I cut in front of you. Even now your chemistry has changed in your mouth. Is it a psychological memory? Is it a mnemonic memory? Body has something. Your salivary gland, just by hearing the word lemon, it starts secreting a different chemical in the mouth. So already there is acidic ingredient in your saliva, because I said lemon. This is not memory. Body also has some smritis. Body has smritis. Whereas English word the memory comes in psychology only. Therefore it is not right to use that word in English, memory, for smriti. Smriti is smriti. When the body digests the food, whatever you eat, it has its memory. It should not be called memory, because memory is in your brain, in a cortex, and there is a structure in the brain, part of the brain, which is related to memory, psychological memory, mnemonic memory. But the body also has memory, which your mind doesn't have. How many of you recall your great-grandfather? You have not even seen, perhaps. Great-great-great-grandfather. None of you have seen. Pretty sure about it. Is that right? But the body has its smriti. Somebody says you resemble to your great-great-great-grandfather, in somebody old in the house, old person in the house. Now that person has seen, you have not seen. You were not even born when he was dead. When he died, you were not even born. What is the chance that you will have memory about that? Your eyes carry memory, nose carry memory. Let's say it resembles your uncle. Perhaps your uncle died before you took birth. Your uncle died before you took birth. Where is the chance of you having memory of your uncle? No chance. But nose carries it, eyes carry it, stature carries it. What is it? Is it memory? It is not a mnemonic memory. Memory is a very, very wide and deep concept. When it comes to philosophy, when it comes to concept of smriti. So these are a couple of things which I wanted to tell you about. Vasanas and samskars are different. Vasanas are not necessarily bad. Shubha vasanas are there. But there are some actualization is there. Some mark is there. It is post-linga phase in metaphysics. There is some mark of it. But samskars, no mark. It is therefore of manomaya kosha. That's called samskar kosh. Pranamaya kosh is called vasana kosh. Vasanamaya sharira is pranamaya kosha. So some mark is already there. In some way or the other. Like a seed giving you clue that this is mango seed and this is rose seed. And this is tamarind seed. When it is showing some mark, then that's the phase of vasanas. When samskars show any sign, mark, vasana. Not until then. That's why somewhere you'll have to understand the Panchakoshas, their purpose in us. Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, their constitution and their purpose, their function, etc. Why are they there? Do you need them? You may not need, something in you needs. There might be some atheists who say, I don't believe in divinity, I don't even need divinity. You may not need divinity because you don't believe in divinity because you're atheist, but something in you needs it. You may not need it, something in you needs it. We have become so practical minded that we don't really bother about difference between what you need and what in you needs. How many of you relish castor oil? Is it something like gulab jam juice that you have, rasgulla juice that you have? Will you like it? You don't like it, but you need it. Who needs? You don't need. Your colon needs it. Your colon even likes it. Your colon will like nothing, no part of your mouth, the whole alimentary system, nothing will like it. It will be uncomfortable once you swallow castor oil. But it is possible that the colons take it as juice of rasgulla. They need it. So you just can't be very practical minded, empirical, what it needs, I will take it. Even medicine nobody needs or nobody likes. But as organ needs it. When organ needs it, you take it. Your organ needs it, therefore you take it. So there is some organ in the deep psyche which not only needs divinity, it relishes and likes divinity. You may not eat it, it will need it. Therefore, in spiritual sadhana, so many things have to be done which are not for you. Therefore, understand what is Adhyatmic sadhana. You can't be just taking what you like. You should be taking what you need. But I'm pretty sure we are in such a phase of yoga, your teacher, whatever teaches you, must like it. If you don't like, you will say goodbye. Is that right? This is not Adhyatmic sadhana. I am pretty sure, suppose I start teaching from tomorrow and none of you like it, I am pretty sure you are all going to say goodbye. It's not Adhyatmic sadhana. You may not like it, so what? Something needs it, you must give. You don't like castor oil, colon needs it, give it. Or something likes in you, you'll have to take it. Say between you as parents and your baby, your child don't like something. A child likes it. Don't you yield to your child? You don't want to go to a particular movie. You don't like it. Or you don't like going to movie at all. But your child says, no, dad you must come, mom you must come, we will have to go. Will you not go? You don't like it, you don't need it. Yet you go. Why? Because you are related to your child. That way you will yield to what the child says. So if you are you so practical minded, telling the child, hey child, if you like, you go. I don't need, I will not come. I don't like, I will not come. You go. Or I will drop you and you go watch the movie. I will not see. Will you do that? You will make your baby sit next to you or on your laps. And you will watch the movie, although you have nothing to see there or you dislike it. Don't you do it? Why don't you find some relationship within us like that? As a parent, you can't be so practical minded. So similarly, if in our embodiment, we must know we have huge society inside us. 40, 50 trillion cells within our embodiment. So should you not consider them? So Adhyatmic sadhana considers all that. It's not a temporal mind, empirical mind. I don't like, I don't do it. I don't want, I will not do it. This is materialism. That's why this is materialism. Adhyatmic sadhana, Adidaivik sadhana, these sadhanas you must know as practitioners of yoga. Whether you like it or you don't like it. Something in you likes it. What will you do? Won't you take it? You have cancer. How many of you require, like cancer treatment? Is there anyone who says, I enjoy cancer treatment? Any cancer patient? Does patient say, I like the cancer treatment? Why do you take it? Something in you needs it. Similarly, in yoga, understand there is something that you will have to learn, not just depend upon your likes and dislikes. Still, I'm not able to teach you those things because I'm pretty sure you will all say goodbye. But there are so many things which should be taught to you, but I can't venture to teach because you still depend upon your likes and dislikes. I must like, I will do it. I don't like, I may not do it. Long way to go. Still we are in run-up of yoga. Run-up to yoga, understand? Okay. Anyway, this samskara is a huge thing. The vasana and samskara are totally mysterious things for us. When we explore, the mysticism goes away. That's why I say keep on exploring, keep on exploring. Go on discovering, exploring. Mysticism, most of it is because we have not explored. There is something absolutely mysterious. But there is not everything absolutely mysterious, relatively mysterious. If we get little wisdom, it will not be a mystery. If we discover, it won't be a mystery. If we explore, it won't be a mystery. Until not explored, it's a mystery. So it's a relative mystery. I think that is enough of worm into your brain about yoga. If I let in more worms, no, you will not be able to put up with it. It will be uncomfortable.
Okay, so we don't have enough time left to go on the Bhashya. So that we'll take next time. I just thought I'll clarify a few things on what he said, just so that there is no confusion. Okay. So when we say samskara goes away, when it has no purpose, okay. So samskara is not of a nature that it will go away because it is not used. Okay. There are two ways, and in the sense that I think what he meant to say was, one is Krutartham pratinishtam, like he mentioned. So Krutartham means the samskara gave rise to its fruit and the purpose is served, and therefore the samskara goes away. Okay, whether good or bad or whatever, it fructified and it's gone. So that is Krutartham pratinishtam. And the other is this particular special case that Patanjali is mentioning here. There are special samskaras that can defeat the other samskaras. Okay, the Samadhija Prajna samskara can defeat the Vyuthana samskara. So in that sense, those samskaras also go away. Okay, but it is very clearly also said that if once a samskara is produced, it won't go away on its own. It will generate its effects. And there is also this in the sort of the Chitta Nadi, the helpful samskaras, the ones that do not cause kleshas, if they exist, they will still come up, right? And ones that are problematic, the Vyuttana samskaras, they will also come up. They will never go away. So they give rise. The only way that they can be defeated is through this Samadhi Prajna. Okay? So that's, I just wanted to make sure that there is no confusion when you are hearing. The other one is about the Ritambara Prajna. So we looked at the Samprajnata Samadhi, Vitarkanugata, Vicharanugata, Anandanugata, Asmitanugata. Now the Ritambara Prajna applies to the Nirvichara Samapatti state for all of these Samprajnata Samadhi. Okay? So the moment you come to the Vichara, whether it is on a Tanmatra, so which is whether it is on a Grahya, or it is on a Indriya Shakti, it is on a Grahana, or whether it is on Asmita Rupa Purusha, the Nirvichara Prajna does come up. That Prajna also Ritam Bibharti, that is also Ritambara. Okay? So what he is referring to when he says Asmita Nugata Samprajnata Samadhi only gives rise to this, that is in the sense of the ability to reach up to Viveka Khyati. The ability for the Chitta to give rise to a correct understanding of the difference between the Chitta and the Purusha. even in the chitta in its very pure state, when it is completely reflecting the Purusha, still it is not identical to the Purusha. That understanding can only arise in the state of the Asmitanugata Sampragnata Samadhi. So the ultimate state pertains only to Asmitanugata, but the Ritambara Prajna state, where there is some fundamental reality that shines in the chitta, may be related to physical aspects of the Tanmatra, that applies to any Nirvichara Samapatti, whether it is about Grahya, Grahana or Grihita, in any of these. Okay, the Kritartha I have already said. Then he also mentioned the Nirbija Samadhi and the Asampragnata Samadhi of two types, as he said. So that I'll cover again to sort of pin down and clarify when we come to the next sutra, because that is one that is going to deal with Asampragnata Samadhi. He also mentioned the Satkaryavada, where in Sankhya it is said that nothing is born out of the blue. Right? So there are entities that evolve, that change, okay, and then they go back. So in that, I want to clarify that when you say nothing is born out of the blue, that refers to the dravya, that refers to the entities, okay, not to the avastha. So the state might be different, okay, just like he said, there is a Vyuttana state, there is a Samadhi state, but the entities in question, they remain the same. They are going and evolving through different states, okay. So when he says that the Kaivalya is always there, what that refers to is that the Purusha is always untouched. Okay, even when it is in the sort of a bound or coupled state with the Chitta and therefore with the Prakriti, the avastha of the coupled system is that it is not Mukta, it is not in Kaivalya, because the Chitta is tied to the Purusha. But the Purusha itself is ever pure, it is ever Shuddha. The effect is happening on the Prakriti. It is the Chitta that is being bound and the Chitta getting freed. The Purusha is untouched. Okay? But it is said when the Chitta is there, there is a Bhoga and Apavarga that is happening. So the Chitta, by its nature of cognizing the Chitta, the Purusha by its nature of cognizing the Chitta, or through, we saw the single reflection, dual reflection, right? The Pratibimba. So in that sense, there is the coupling which then goes away when the Kaivalya comes. Okay? But so when we say the Kaivalya is always there, what he refers to is that the Purusha is always pure and free. So there is no impurities or any such thing coming onto the Purusha, but it is definitely coming onto the Chitta, which will then later go away. Okay? So the avastha can change in Satkaryavada. It is the Dravya and the entities that remain constant, and nothing is born out of the blue. So in that sense, there should be no confusion about what is being said. And the rest, the 2 points were about the one samskara to be restrained in the end, and the lemon as a form of a smriti, which we'll see when we look at the bhashya, because it is going to touch upon those aspects, but we'll see that in the next session, so that things are very clear there. Okay, so we'll stop here. So next time we'll look at the bhashya of the current sutra 1.50, and then we move on to the last sutra of the chapter 1.51 after that. Next week this session won't be there because of the program at the PYC, but the week after next, on the 15th, we will have this session on Sunday. Okay? So we'll say the shlokas on Guruji and that's all. Vaijñānika shikshakatve
Vaijñānika shikshakatve
Kalākāra āsaneshu yaha
Kalākāra āsaneshu yaha
Yogābhyāse cha tattvajñas
Yogābhyāse cha tattvajñas
Tam vande sundaram gurum
Tam vande sundaram guru
Yoga vruksho lokesmin
Yoga vruksho lokesmin
Vardhito yasya preranaya
Vardhito yasya preranaya
Yogacharyaya gurave
Yogacharyaya gurave
Sundaraya namo namaha.
Sundaraya namo namaha.
Yeah, probably we could take one question or one or two questions.
In one of your discourses, you had said that your body is yours, your organs are yours, your breath is not yours, it is for you. So when it comes to the pranamaya kosha, if it is the breath, or is it more deeper? Means the breath, the chakras, and anything else? I just wanted to know.
No, Pranamaya Kosha is not breath. Breath is breath. Pranamaya Kosha. It is an aspect of a layer of our embodiment, which is prana profused. Prana is not breath. Breath is for prana. And the breath is because of prana. Because the breath as air, matter is outside you. Even if you are dead, the matter, oxygen is outside you. When you have life, then that oxygen will become prana for you. So, that's why you should distinguish between the breath, which is called Shwasa Prachwasa, and Prana, Pranayama. That's why I have said Pranayama is not Shwasayam. Regulating the breath is not Pranayama. The breath is a vehicle for prana to move in the embodiment. Breath is a vehicle for prana to move in the embodiment. So breath is a vehicle and the prana is a passenger in it. So Pranamaya Kosha is, in one perspective or one dimension of it, is that it is the body of all our tendencies. Usually we class them as one kind of tendency. We say this is my tendency. This is somebody's tendency, this is your tendency. But the tendencies have 6 classes. What you call as your tendencies. There are 6 classes of it. So those are called Mooladhar, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Ajna. A Mooladhar is the tendency in you because of just being a biological being. That's a Mooladhar. So these tendencies are common to all living creatures. It can be tiny bacteria to human being, to elephant, to dinosaurs, or any supergiant biological creature, or even trees, huge trees. So that's something very, very basic aspect. Ahara, Nidra, Bhaya, Maithunam. These are basic tendencies for all living creatures. We have tendencies for all that. That's why they are called Mooladhara. Being living creature, they are there. Then comes Swa Adhisthana, which is the substrate for your individuality. So these are various kinds of vasanas which yoga psychology speaks about. Manipuraka vasanas. So if you look into that book where I deal with Pranamaya Kosha and the 6 chakras, you will get to know what are these various kinds of tendencies. So Swa Adhisthana means there are something which are typical to you. You distinguish one person between another person because of those samskars, not because of Mooladhara samskars. You can't even distinguish yourself from a bedbug and ant and mosquito because they also have the same tendencies, basic tendencies, biological basic tendencies. But when it comes to Swa Adhisthana, you can distinguish between a human being and another human being. And therefore, you can distinguish between you and ant and elephant, etc. as well. Because individuality differs. Then comes Manipuraka. So you should know what is Manipuraka vasanas. What class is that? Then comes Anahata. Then comes Vishuddhi, then comes Ajna. So there's a tendency structure which we have, which Pranamaya Kosha constitutes. So there's nothing to do with the Prana and Pranamaya Kosha. The Prana and breath have usual relationship. If there is no Prana, breath is not needed. If there is no breath, the Prana will not be there. If I put you in a chamber where there is no air at all, you will die. So breath and prana has relationship, but the prana and pranamaya kosha should not be mixed up. Prana is only life force. Pranamaya. Maya prefix comes to mention profusion. Do you mean to say there is no water here in this? If I squeeze it, smash it, some dampness will come out of it. Do you follow? However, you will say there is no water, this is a microphone or this is a mat. However, water in subtle form is there. So if I squeeze and press it, then some dampness will come out of it. But you don't call it water because there is no water profusion. So prana and prana profusion, huge difference. Water and water profusion, huge difference. Fire and fire profusion, huge difference. Air and air profusion, huge difference. So this is prana profusion. Maya comes for profusion. Maya pratyaya, the suffix comes for exuberance. So don't confuse between prana and pranamaya kosha. When we die, prana will go. Pranamaya kosha will transmigrate. So not to confuse between prana and pranamaya kosha. So that you will not confuse between breath and pranamaya kosha. There is no relationship between breath and pranamaya kosha. Okay.
Thank you.